All rise.
Good afternoon. Please be seated. And we are back on the record.
Everything's sorted out on my end, Judge. We can proceed as we need to. Thank you. I don't have to leave at 4:15.
All right. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Mr. Pitaro, I believe we had left off with you. You will most likely need to repeat your question or where you were at with this witness. I believe you'd asked Ms. Stone to provide something to her.
Yes, Your Honor, I provided her with Exhibit K.
And here I object, because it has not been shown that the line of questioning is about the documents that Mr. Handte stated that he had seen in Mr. Hillygus' possession. This is not a document from Mr. Hillygus' possession, therefore it's completely irrelevant as to this issue. Not for proof, I don't believe that could ever be shown what particular packet was shown to Mr. Handte.
Mr. Pitaro, can you address that?
As the court may remember, the last time we were here, Mr. Stege went through at length talking about the documents that were reviewed. He went through the reviews that were reviewed by Mr. Handte and Mr. Hillygus before they went in. He also, the testimony they discussed with Mr. Handte during the prior that he had reviewed these documents a couple days before, and so those are in fact the documents that we're talking about. As you remember, on direct examination, the detective went through a litany of things that she said she discussed with Mr. Handte, including endorsements, including the stamp, Arizona documents, reversing the property executive judge in Washoe County. So that's what this is. That's what it is. It's brought out by them, and that's why we're going to be going through, because one of the issues is the question of Mr. Handte review of these documents, and what the detective was asking him about, Your Honor. As you can clearly remember, Mr. Stege went through those things of what did you and Mr. Handte talk about. And so that's why I'm going through these.
Your Honor, if I may be heard on this issue.
All right.
Thank you. Your Honor, it's very interesting to me that the state would object to this document as not being particularly shown to Mr. Handte when the state has continuously said over my objections, had documents admitted that they could not show were the actual documents that were given or handed to anybody at any particular time because they weren't certified or because the person had no idea what they were said. I'm not criticizing your ruling. I'm just saying it's extremely inconsistent for the state to try and keep evidence out on the same grounds that I tried to keep evidence out. It's just they need to pick a position in this case based upon the documents themselves and go with it. Either Mr. Pitaro can ask these questions or not, but I think it's very incongruent for the state to be taking the position it is.
So, I will allow the witness to at least look at this document, and then Mr. Pitaro, depending on what question you have about it, Mr. Stege's objection may or may not be appropriate at that time, but she has not even looked at the document yet. I will at least allow her to look at it, and then you can ask the question. So she is looking at K. J. Oh, J. As in John. Yes. Thank you. J is in John.
You have that document in front of you, which is J, detective?
Correct.
And that is a document that's been admitted into evidence?
Yes.
There's a stamp on the back?
Correct.
Okay. Now, Detective Jenkins, you were interviewed, when Mr. Handte was interviewed, he was also being interviewed by Detective Lopez?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. And both you and he were talking about the documents that Mr. Handte had been, Mr. Handte had looked at, isn't that correct?
Yes.
Okay. I want to just go you have in front of you and the testimony that you've given us concerning Mr. Handte telling you why he thought there was legitimacy to that. Now, is it in fact the document in that exhibit that has the stamp or the file stamp copy of the marshal clerk's office?
There is. I don't know that there's any provable correlation between this document I have in my hand and what was shown to Mr. Handte that he was referring to during that interview.
Well, with all due respect, Detective, you're the one that's interviewing him, aren't you?
Yes, I am.
You're the one that's asking him the questions, aren't you?
Yes, sir, I am.
Objection, it's argumentative. My point of my previous objection was just made, that the line of questioning is about what Mr. Handte claimed to have seen. We don't know what documents those were unless he's able to tell us what they were. These are different documents admitted for a, not incongruent, but for a direct and acute reason. For that reason, this line of questioning, and this question in particular, is improper.
So, Mr. Pitaro, again, I've allowed the witness to look at this document. You can ask her questions about it, but assumptions that it sounds like you're making in your questions, those are reserved for argument. If you want to ask her questions about the document itself and her personal knowledge, you can do that. But otherwise, I agree that as to, is this the document that Mr. Handte was referring to in the discussions with Detective Jenkins, that's something to be argued at this point.
Well, let me just respond, and then I can ask the question when you go from there. First, any witness, once a document is submitted, any witness can testify to the document. Any exhibit that is introduced in the court, any witness can testify to it. So this witness is competent to testify to a document in the state. That's one. That's just basic on-book evidence law. The second issue is, of course, is the question of, she was stating that Mr. Handte was telling her about the documents. And I am asking her, were those documents the ones that are included in this document there? If he's talking about other documents, he can say no, they're not there. Or she can say yes, they are. The only way I'm going to get there is by having her look at it.
Okay, and Mr. Pitaro, if I could stop you to address these points, otherwise the compound nature of the argument gets such that we get lost. As to the first point, I absolutely agree with you. That's what I just said, is this witness can look at this document, she can answer questions about it. As to your second part, again, that's a different issue, but I absolutely agree that she can look at the document, and you can ask her questions about it, but as to making assumptions about where it was, what it was, who saw it, who had it, who read it, I don't know that this witness can testify to those things, but you can certainly ask her questions about this document.
Your Honor, maybe I missed, I'll tell you that I misspoke. I'm asking her what she asked Mr. Handte about if they were included in the documents that are a part of that exhibit. That's what I'm asking. I'm not asking what Joe Blow did. I'm talking about what it was that Mr. Handte and her and Mr. Lopez discussed in the piece of evidence, the interview that the article was already in the evidence itself to them. So that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about going through it to see if she discussed it with Mr. Handte, these particular documents, as we do it, or we go through one by one. We know there was discussions on in Boston.
I think the question, Mr. Pitaro, about this document, and was it when they discussed, you can ask that question. But again, my understanding of the testimony is that at this interview, neither one had documents in their possession at that point. So you can go ahead and ask questions related to this document.
So what is the on exhibit, what does it have?
J as in John.
Okay, for the first time, what is that entitled?
I'm sorry, Mr. Pitaro, did you ask a question?
Yes, the question was, what is the first document in that series of documents? What is it entitled?
What is Is it titled?
The first document in the exhibit is what he's asking. What's the first document
What's
in
the
the
name
exhibit?
of it?
The judgment.
Okay, and did Mr. Ewan, Mr. Handte, of the judgment, is that the judgment from the Washoe District Court's office?
And was it filed with the district court or is it from the district court?
But if you can look at it, you feel a file stamp copy looks like, don't you?
I'm sorry, I cannot remember.
He said, do you know what a file stamped
Do
copy
you know what a
looks like?
file stamp copy looks like?
Yes, I do, sir.
Okay, and on the upper right-hand corner, is there a file stamp, on that document?
Yes, there is.
So now we know that you know that it is in fact the document that has a file stamp copy on it, don't you?
Yes, I know this document has a file stamp on it, yes.
Was this one of the documents that you were talking with Mr. Handte about?
I
When
have,
he mentioned that the document had been filed in the Washoe County Court's office.
I have no way of knowing if this is the same document he was referring to or not.
Well, what document were you referring to when you discussed it with him?
Well, it was him bringing those documents that he alleged to have seen to my attention. I asked him specific questions about those documents, and
Okay,
he,
let me ask you this, did you ask him any specific questions about that first document? That is the judgment filed in the Washoe County District Court's office.
what was the first part of the question?
Did you discuss it with him?
Did I discuss this particular document with him?
Yes.
No, I did not.
Did you discuss generally a document filed in the Washoe County District Clerk's office dealing with a judgment overturning the decision of the District Court judge? Did you discuss that?
Mr. Handte told me that he viewed documents, or a stack of paper provided to him by Mr. Hillygus. He mentioned specifically the name Egan Walker. He mentioned the state of Arizona and an embossment.
All right, let's go from one at a time. What is the first one you said?
That he believed that some of those documents had the name Judge Egan Walker on them.
Oh, Judge Egan Walker. Did you ask him what those documents were?
I believe I did. And he had difficulty identifying them.
Did you try to identify a farm?
No, sir, I didn't have a way to identify the documents he was describing to me, having never seen them before.
Mr. Handte, you said Mr. Handte told you that he was duped?
At some point in the interview, one of the two interviews, he told me that he felt he had been duped into doing something he shouldn't have done, in part because of the documents he saw, in part because of Mr. Hillygus and conversations they've had.
Right, and as a matter of fact, you said specifically to Mr. Handte, this is you now, but I think you knew the paperwork. My point is, I have a hard time imagining you getting duped. You're not stupid. So you were referring to the paperwork and you were emailing.
If you're asking if I was referring to this specific document, no, not necessarily.
What document were you referring to?
I was referring to the stack of paper he had previously described to me, which he said contained various documents, including photographs and birth certificates.
So, and he discussed the document concerning the District Court judge in Washoe County, correct?
Just a document with Egan Walker's name on it.
Yeah. And what did he say about it?
That was what he could remember of it, was that he remembered the name Judge Egan Walker.
Okay. And he felt that that gave the documents legitimacy, correct?
I don't know that he said that he felt that that name alone gave all those pieces of paper in that stack legitimacy. or if he was simply making reference to that was something that he read on one of the documents.
But when you ask him, did you think that should have any effect?
I don't remember if I asked him about Judge Walker's name specifically. I remember asking him whether he felt the documents were legitimate or not, and I remember having several different conversations about that particular talking point.
Did he ever tell you that you got the documents were legitimate?
I don't think he ever told me he thought they were. He may have at one point, and clarified later on that he did find them suspicious or confusing.
Confusing. And you know, you don't know how he did it, referring to Roger. I know he turned out to be essentially forged documents. I know that's the thing. You told Mr. Handte that when you were discussing these documents, you and he were talking about it, correct?
I'm sorry, sir, can you repeat the question, Your Honor?
Sure.
I can't hear it.
Isn't it true that when you were discussing these documents, you told Mr. Handte, I know this common stuff is essentially forged documents. I know that's the thing. That's what you told Mr. Handte when you were interviewing him, couldn't you?
I still can't understand it.
So, Mr. Pitaro, it will help, sir, if you face the camera when you're speaking. Sometimes you turn your head to the side, and I know that it's difficult, but she can hear you best if you face the camera when you're speaking. If you could face the camera and repeat the question more times so she can hear you.
Detective Jenkins, isn't it true when you were discussing these documents with Mr. Handte, that's the time frame, that you told him, when he was telling you about the documents, that you said that you were aware that there are companies that will forge documents. And then the true you said that?
I may have, I don't recall saying that at this moment.
And isn't it true you told him, well, that should have fooled you, Mr. Handte?
I'm not sure I understood every word again.
All right. Isn't it true that you told Mr. Handte that after the forged document, you made him a comment of the forged document, that should not have fooled you?
Yes,
Is that what you told him?
I remember telling him, not those words exactly, but I remember telling him that I had difficulty believing with his background in law enforcement, that these documents wouldn't be confusing to the point where he didn't need to look into them more or just gave them, any sort of real credibility based on the limited information he could provide me.
Well, if you didn't know what the document was, how were you asking those questions?
So he was able to provide me very little about the documents themselves, and told me that just based on that review of those documents, he felt that there was, that those documents really and truly did supersede any authority that the documents issued previously by the district court here locally had, and that those documents coming from Arizona, it was difficult for me to believe with the background that we have, that a police officer could be duped, so to speak, or anything else into thinking that paperwork with the name of the state of Arizona on it could potentially overturn a ruling from the state of Nevada.
Yeah, but that's not what he's doing. He's talking. He's telling you why he thought they were good, correct?
At certain points of the interview, yes, he told me that.
And what you're telling us now is that you didn't think that he should have found things to be legitimate, correct?
That's correct.
And that's your opinion. It wasn't his, was it?
I don't know what his opinion was, but yes, that was certainly mine.
I told you what his opinion was. They thought they were legitimate.
That was his alleged opinion, yes.
Yes, well, that was his opinion, wasn't, no, right, he said it, didn't he?
He did say that, yes.
And you know, Mr. Hente's background, he was a highway patrolman.
He was a highway patrolman and worked for numerous other law enforcement agencies as well.
The majority of the time was a highway patrolman, wasn't it?
Yes, that sounds accurate.
The patrolman generally deal with traffic, not stop that.
I can't hear.
He said highway patrolmen generally deal in traffic, don't they?
They do a lot of traffic enforcement, certainly, and I know that they do other things as well.
And Mr. Henry told you that he was not an expert on documents, when you asked him about, could he interpret those documents. That's what he told you, wasn't it?
I don't think I ever asked him if he was an expert in documents. I remember a point in the second interview where he recalled a conversation he'd had with an attorney who asked him if he was an expert in documents, and he told that attorney no, but that he had seen his fair share of them.
All right, but he told you that he wasn't an expert, was he? Is that correct?
I don't know that he told me that outside of relaying the conversation he had with his attorney at some point.
Now, on the document that we were referring to when we were talking to him, we've gone through the first document that has the stamp of the court. What is the second document? And that exhibit.
It is titled Notice of Judgment, Sworn Affidavit, and Jury Verdict.
Okay. Did he discuss that with you?
I don't think so, not in those words.
Well, what words did he discuss it with you at all?
I would be happy to review that portion of the interview or even my report.
Well, are you saying you don't know?
I can't recall what words he used, if any, to describe something similar to this, or more specifically to describe the paperwork he told me about during that first meeting.
Well, with all due respect, Detective, a direct examination, you were quite specific in the items that they had to be discussed when you went through the litany of those items. And all I'm trying to do is go through that litany with you to see if they were included in that exhibit and if you discussed it with them. So let me go to the second document again. Did he discuss the fact that Mr. Hillygus said he had a jury verdict in his favor?
I don't recall if he said a jury verdict or a court order, but yes, he claimed to have some sort of order that he said superseded all the previous orders issued by the Second Judicial District Court regarding his mom's custody.
And that is what Mr. Handte told you in your interview.
To the best of my recollection, yes, sir.
Well, what is the third document there?
It's titled the same, the Notice of Judgment, Sworn Affidavit, and Jury Verdict.
And so would your answer be the same as to that document as what we just talked about? Or is it a different answer?
No, it would be the same answer. I don't know that Mr. Handte mentioned this document to me specifically, or if this is what he was trying to refer to during our interview.
Okay. What is the next thing, the next document?
It's a mostly blank page that says Exhibit A.
Okay. Now, what is the next document that when you and he were talking about, you mentioned the embossment, and you mentioned judgment reversal. What was the next document that Mr. Handte discussed?
I object to any questioning that ties this packet, the exhibits in this packet, to the allegations of that Mr. Handte claimed to have seen. It's intentional and improper that, I think it's well settled that these documents cannot be shown, or even that Mr. Handte claims to have seen.
Mr. Pitaro?
The question is, yes, the question is, did you discuss it? If you did, you did it. You did it, you did it. If it's one of the documents in the exhibit you can reference to, I'm asking if you got a document that was referenced in a conversation with the hand. Either was or it wasn't. Not improper, it's a piece of evidence that has been introduced by the state.
And Mr. Pitaro, I think the last document the witness just stated was a mostly blank piece of paper with Exhibit A. If you are referencing another document and want to direct her attention to another document, I think that's proper. Or ask a different type of question worded differently, but I don't believe there is a document before her right now, other than the last thing she just described.
I understand that, Your Honor, when she said it was blank, and I said, what was the next document that you did discuss? And so that's my question. And the litany of events that you said you discussed with the Handte, what was the next document you discussed?
And I agree with Mr. Stege that I think the wording of that question doesn't necessarily reflect the testimony. This witness has testified that she had discussions with Mr. Handte about paperwork that contained numerous documents. And again, I'll allow you to show her different exhibits and ask her about those things specifically, but to say that what was the next document you discussed when we've already established that it was a stack of papers or paperwork, which is relatively vague, I think that you need to reword that question. But I'll certainly allow you to ask her questions about any documents that are in evidence.
Well, the question I have is after we went through the issue with the jury verdict, we asked you that question, what is the next document that you and Mr. Handte discussed concerning the things he said that he had looked at?
Mr. Handte and I discussed a stack of paperwork, and that stack of paperwork, according to him, had several different documents in it that were explained to him and shown to him by Mr. Hillygus.
And did he tell me what those documents were?
No, he could only describe pieces and portions of those documents.
Okay, tell me what these pieces and portions you described, starting with the next one in order.
The next one in line in this packet, because
Next one you discussed with him. Listen to my question. Tell me about the pieces that you discussed with, about the next document, when you had a conversation with Mr. Handte concerning the review of documents. What's the next thing you discussed?
I don't know that I can lay it out for you chronologically, other than to say he told me he was presented with a stack of paperwork, and in that paperwork was a birth certificate in Ms. Hillygus' name, a photo of Ms. Hillygus, paperwork with Judge Egan Walker's name on it, and paperwork that appeared to be from the state of Arizona, which Mr. Hillygus claimed to him was an order that superseded all previous court orders in the state of Nevada, and that one of those documents, or maybe more than one of them, had an embossment on it.
And he said that he saw the birth certificate of Mrs. Hillygus.
Correct.
And what did he say about the birth certificate that gave significance in your question?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
You said that he discussed and saw the birth certificate, that he explained to you the significance of him viewing the birth certificate and this packet of documents you were discussing.
Just that birth certificate was included in that stack of paperwork.
And did you ask him why that was important?
I don't recall Certainly, I don't recall every detail verbatim of that portion of our conversation, no.
So you don't recall whether or not you asked him anything about the birth certificate, outside of him saying that it was, he saw a birth certificate.
I may have asked him about it.
Well, you understand now, I don't get that, call you up tomorrow and ask you, if you remember, and ask you what you heard today.
Yes, I certainly understand, and I'm not trying to be difficult.
So you're saying you don't remember.
I don't recall, that's correct.
Let me ask you this, as a trained investigator, if a person says, I saw a document and that gave legitimacy, would you not have, asked a follow-up question on that?
Well, I did ask him follow-up questions about the documents and asked him to describe them to me to the best of his ability.
I'm talking about the birth certificate. We're running the birth certificate now, it's not junk. I'm trying to do this slow so we can get through it. After him saying the birth certificate, did you make any, what, is it that the sort of question that you would want to know why he thought it was significant?
I'm sorry, I can't understand the last part of the question. I can't hear it.
Ed, is that not the sort of document you would want to know why he thought was important to tell you about?
I thought it was important that he be able to describe to me all the documents and what he perceived them as.
We're talking about just the birth certificate. You want to match everything in and say, well, I'm talking about just the birth certificate. And how was the birth certificate? He said, I saw the birth certificate of Mrs. Hillygus. And then my question to you is, once he told you that, did you make any inquiry concerning the birth certificate? And your answer is, I don't remember. And my next question is, would you, as a trained investigator, where a person is saying that I saw a document, I believe the birth certificate, which you thought gave legitimacy to the whole pack of the documents of what he did, that you would want to ask a follow-up question?
So I think you're saying now that he told me that part of what gave those documents validity in his mind was the birth certificate, and I don't know that that point was ever made by him. And I don't recall whether I asked him clarifying the information about the birth certificate in that packet, other than him telling me that he believed it belonged to Miss Hillygus.
And what other documents were they after the birth certificate?
Can you repeat the question?
What other document was there after you discussed the birth certificate?
I'm so sorry, I cannot.
He said, what other document did you discuss after the birth certificate?
We discussed in that stack of paperwork, it having a photo of Miss Hillygus, it having something with the name of.
Stop there. Just stop there. What was the significance of the photo of Mrs. Hillygus?
I don't know what, if any, significance he assigned to the photo of Miss Hillygus, just that it was a photo of Miss Hillygus.
Did you ask him what significance he assigned to it?
I don't remember if I asked him that specifically or not.
You may have, or you may not, but just by today, you don't have any memory of whether or not it happened, correct?
Correct.
But that would obviously be a case of an trained investigator would want to follow up as to why that picture was important to the person who's giving you the interview. Would you agree with that?
I can't agree that I see the same relevance you seem to place on the photo of Miss Hillygus, other than what seems like the obvious to me.
What is the obvious to you?
That it's a photo of Miss Hillygus, and that Mr. Handte is discussing custody of Miss Hillygus, his mother.
Have you ever seen that photograph?
If you're asking me if I've seen the photograph that was shown to Mr. Handte, I have no way of knowing whether I have or not.
He described the photograph, I believe, showing younger Mrs. Hillygus, is that correct?
He may have described it that way. It's very possible.
Do you remember what he said? I'm trying to get it, if he did or didn't, you don't remember.
I don't remember exactly how he described the photograph of Miss Hillygus, other than it was a photo of Miss Hillygus.
And what was the next, item that you discussed?
Like I said before, we didn't go, he wasn't able to provide me an itemized list of what was in that stack of paper. With the exception of the photograph and the birth certificate, a piece of paper or document with the name of Judge Walker, and a document that had something to do with the state of Arizona, and an embossment somewhere in there as well. You know,
When you were doing this, interview with Mr. Handte, did you ask him if he had the documents to show you?
I don't recall if I asked him that, but it was clear to me that he did not.
And some of these questions, I take it, were when he was in custody, correct?
When he initially told me about that stack of paperwork, it was prior to him being arrested, and then we discussed it further at the police station, yes.
So we might have expected them to be able to produce any documents when he was in custody at the police station, would you?
Yeah, I never produced documents to him, and nor did he produce documents to me.
Well, I can understand why he didn't produce them to you in the jail. Did you have the documents that you could have produced to him?
I had documents that were filed with the court. I had no way of knowing if those were the documents he was explaining to me or describing to me.
I guess the question is, did you ask him? I mean, you could have asked him, these the documents or not?
I could, but based on his limited ability to describe them, I'm not sure that that was something he could answer or not.
They didn't give him a chance to answer, did you?
No, I did not show him the documents.
So, you didn't give him a chance to answer that question, did you?
No.
So, when we look at these, series of interviews, and I'm talking about house interviews and Starbucks and the jail interviews, all right? As a sequence as contained in the one exhibit. At some point in time, Mr. Handte started admitting to things that you now know were not true. Isn't that correct?
I can't think of any occasions that he admitted to something that was not true, with the exception of him saying that he had written Susan in his own name. At some point, he tells me that he did falsify information. I'm not sure if that's what you're referring to.
He falsified what?
Information on the signage.
Yes or no? The information is, well, his name is Stewart, isn't it?
It is. He told me he also wrote the name Gus for Roger.
All right. Right, and you told him that Gus, it was pretty obvious that he knew who Gus was, because Gus and, was Mr. Hillygus made fun. You telling him that you received, text messages where you trying to see Mr. Handte as Gus, correct?
Mr. Handte told me he used the name Gus prior to the discovery of that text message, or prior to any admission on Mr. Handte's part that he knew that to be a nickname of Gus. When I initially asked him about that, he told me he didn't know where that name had come from, only that Mr. Hillygus had asked him to use it because he was afraid of being recognized inside the home.
Well, issue of, let me just swing this back to the undrafted documents. And Mr. Handte told you that he was duped by these documents, didn't he?
Yes, he made that allegation.
And he said the reason he was duped by those documents is because you and the other detectives in your interviewing told them that those documents were fraudulent. Is that correct?
No, that's not entirely true.
So isn't it true that he said the reason I felt duped was because you told me the documents weren't legitimate?
No, I don't think that's accurate either. I'd be happy to explain further if you'd like.
Well, if you didn't say it, you didn't say it, it's in the transcript. If you didn't say it, it's in the transcript if you did. The question is, are you saying now that he did not tell you that he was duped because you told him the documents were not legitimate?
Here I object to Mr. Pitaro saying what is or is not in a transcript, which is not in evidence. And therefore it's an improper question for Mr. Pitaro to testify about a supposed transcript.
Mr. Pitaro, I would just,
The state introduced it. That's the interviews. They introduced.
if we're speaking about the interviews, then if we're speaking about the interviews, then I would just ask you to be a bit more precise, and instead of saying transcript, say interviews, so that we're all on the same page.
Did Mr. Handte tell you that he was duped because you told him the documents were not legitimate? That's why he said he was duped.
That is not the reason he gave me or provided me for feeling that he had been duped, no.
I want to question about it.
Of course.
Isn't it true that Mr. Handte told you that he was duped by the documents?
Not just by the documents, but by the circumstance as a whole.
And you told him that you didn't think he was duped because he was sympathetic to Mr. Hillygus' position concerning his mother.
I did tell him that it was difficult for me to imagine, that based on the circumstances he was explaining to me, that he could be that easily duped given his experience as a law enforcement officer.
And isn't it true that in response to you saying those words, that Stewart asked you then, I'm going back to the embossment, he asked them how could guys get an embossment stamp if they weren't legitimate?
I don't know at what point he asked me.
This is the interview, the second interview, is approximately 54 minutes, 10 seconds into it.
Yes, he may have asked me that question. Was there more to your question?
I did ask you that question, didn't it?
I don't recall specifically. I don't doubt that he did.
And the answer is that you, Mr. Detective Lopez, gave him any reason how an embossment would be on a document if it wasn't real. Is that correct?
I don't recall what Detective Lopez said. I don't recall. I'd be happy to review that interview or the portion you're referring to.
So it's 54.10. And Stu, let me just give him the truth. Stu asked you how fast could get the embossed steps on there if they were not real. And you said, yes, he did say that. And what I'm saying is you did not, and you, after that was said, neither you nor Detective Lopez told him how that happened, did you?
So for a couple of points of clarification, he never referred to Mr. Hillygus discussed during that interview that you're referring to, but also I'm not sure if you're asking me if Detective Lopez asked him a certain question or if we told him that that was a possibility or not. I'm not sure.
You were there with Detective Lopez, right?
Yes, I was.
Okay, he was there at your request or part of the investigation?
Yes, he was.
He was a participant in the interrogation, wasn't he?
He was. Did you ask if he was present for it?
I said he was a participant in the investigation, wasn't he?
Yes, he was.
He was a participant in the interview, wasn't he?
Yes, he was.
I assume you were paying attention to what Mr. Handte was saying and what Detective Lopez was saying.
Yes, I certainly did my best.
And let me go then back to the question again. Did you or Mr. Lopez tell Mr. Handte how they could have got an endorsement on a document to make it look real?
I don't recall.
And Mr. Pitaro, I'd like to stop you now. It's approximately 5 o'clock. I'd like to inquire of the parties, and I'll give everyone a chance to weigh in, if we believe that we are going to be able to conclude the preliminary hearing today, or if we should take a break for today and look at scheduling the rest of the preliminary hearing at another date and time.
I've been a pretty lucky guy. I know you asked for just a little bit of background, but what comes to mind is that, well, I still...
I'm going to make a record about you in a minute. You need to sit down and be quiet.
For those that don't know me, which is be difficult in Nevada, my name is Judge Cheryl Moss. I served in Family Court, Department I, from.
For the record, I don't say these things to hear myself talk.
An absolute decree of divorce is granted.
By September 6th, you will pay $6,000 of what is due.
In the dependency arena, you really do boil down what the best interest of the child actually means. You could have a party argument.
Ask the question, make sure we're being accurate with what it actually states.
begin with you.
From my perspective, if we can in fact take a break and see if we can get some time in, if the court is available, next week, because I know the court will continue, another trial, and the trial was supposed to start Monday, has negotiated, so, I have availability, at sometime next week, although I do realize that it's the Labor Day week, and I'm not sure once a year, I'm Friday, the Labor Day weekend, I think that unless Mr. Stege has other witnesses, and Mr. Evenson, I'm not sure, where we're at. I was led to believe that Mr. Stege was going to go on protective farms, at our last conversation, and of course, he said earlier, whether he's going to do it or not, I don't know, he was going to call the personnel from Stone Valley, the two ladies and Mr. Taylor.
All right, Mr. Pitaro, let me inquire of the other attorneys that are here. Mr. Stege, is it your desire also that we'll need to schedule further time?
My desire is to push forward today and rest out the case.
Mr. Evenson?
If Mr. Stege is indicating that he wants to push forward today and rest, I am 100% in favor of that. That would be best for me and my calendar and my life at this moment, because I can't believe we'll be here that much longer.
Mr. Pitaro, Mr. Stege's represented that he believes he could conclude his portion of the preliminary hearing today and would like to continue.
Well, would the court inquire as to what witnesses he is calling? If any?
So, Mr. Stege, go ahead.
Although I think we all recognize I'm not required to do so, I will state now that if, I would hope to finish with Detective Jenkins and proceed to resting the case.
So, Mr. Pitaro, that seems to me to indicate at this point he's not planning on calling any other witnesses at this point in time.
All right, that's fine, Ron. I need that clarification because I was led to believe something different.
I understand that's fine, and that's fine, Mr. Pitaro. But let's continue to go forward. But I'll just state I'm not going to continue forward 2 or 3 hours into the evening. I will continue somewhat into the evening. So go ahead, Mr. Pitaro.
Mr. Handte told you during the interview, the second interview, if you will, the Starbucks interview, that he was told by Mr. Hillygus to write down Alice. Do you remember Mr. Handte telling you that?
No, I don't.
And you remember Mr. Handte telling you, and the second interview, this would be roughly 26 hours, or something, 26 minutes into it, where he signed in for both Hillygus and he wrote Gus and Alice.
I do remember him telling me that. I remember him telling me that Mr. Hillygus requested he use the name Gus, and that he chose the name Alice off of the login sheet after seeing a previous entry with the name Alice.
But now we know after 2 years, we know that there was no Alice put by Mr. Handte down when we put down Gus. Is that correct?
Assuming,
You know that now.
I'm sorry. He said you know that now.
oh, assuming that entry with the name Stu and Gus was written by Mr. Handte, yes, absolutely.
So he told you that, assuming that he was actually giving you information that was incorrect, wasn't it?
It was partially correct.
Wasn't it? Well, the Alice wasn't correct, was it?
And no, it was not.
Okay, but he is telling you Alice, and because during the discussions leading up to that, you had accused him and Mr. Hillygus of using Alice as a false name to get into the residency, right?
It is still my recollection that he was the person to bring up Alice, not me.
But when you did it, you kept going on about Alice, didn't you?
Yeah, it's possible we discussed it after he brought up using the name and said, well, it must have been Alice that I put down.
That's not correctly known now. And the point is, it seems that what's happening in this interview process is Mr. Handte tells you the truth at the beginning. You basically call him a liar, and then at the end, he's telling you what you told him you wanted to hear. That's really what happened in this interviewing process, isn't it?
Objection to the form of it, to what a thing seems like, and to its argumentative nature. This is proper argument, but not questioning.
I agree, Mr. Pitaro. Can you please rephrase and simplify the question?
Absolutely. The text objection. The series of these interviews went as follows. Mr. Handte initially told you the truth about the signing sheet. You told him that he was lying. You told him that you had the signing sheet and that he did not sign. Then as it went on, kept telling him that if he wanted to help himself or do it in his own interest, he had to tell you the truth. And by the time we're done with this interviewing process, 3 interviews later, Mr. Handte is telling you things like, yes, I put Alice down. When the truth is that, you know, he did.
Same objection. That's a lot of facts in one compound, a very compound and argumentative question. And all these issues, these questions, these subparts are all part of the record having been asked and answered.
I would agree at this point, Mr. Pitaro, this question has been asked and answered. We've been over this issue numerous times, so the objection to asked and answered is sustained.
And where we're left with the objection based upon your interviewing techniques and your partner's interviewing techniques is that Mr. Handte ultimately is ending up admitting to things that weren't true, correct?
In that particular instance, he was partially.
The answer is yes, isn't it?
Objection to not letting the witness answer the question before her.
Mr. Pitaro, please let the witness answer the question.
It's true, isn't it?
I don't think so, no. He told me that he had provided, by the culmination of these interviews, he told me he had provided a fictitious name of Gus at the request of Mr. Hillygus, and he did mistakenly or incorrectly tell me that he had written the name Alice. That name was written by, it appears, someone in their party, and they did in fact go to Alice's door. I don't think it's a fair characterization that he admitted to numerous things in that interview that were not accurate or were not true.
Well, let's go to Gus. The other one that told him that Gus was Mr. Hillygus' citizen.
No, sir, that is not accurate.
He told him that you had looked at text messages where Mr. Hillygus had sent to Mr. Handte, and he signed them, and they were signed Gus. That's what you told him.
Correct.
And when he told you that he used a false name of Gus, he didn't use a false name of Gus, because Gus is in fact Mr. Hillygus, isn't it?
When this was first brought to my attention by Mr. Handte, he told me he didn't know why that name had been chosen. And only later, after being confronted with that text message, said he was aware that that was a nickname some people used for Mr. Hillygus.
And you told him that?
I told him I had seen the text message that I'm referring to. I did not tell him that that was a nickname I knew Mr. Hillygus to use.
But you know it enough to mention that it's in a text message to tell him that he knew that Gus was in fact Mr. Hillygus, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
And you told us just a few moments ago that when he said that he used the false name Gus, we now know that he did use the false name Gus, don't we?
I'm sorry, I can hear most of what you're saying. I just cannot hear the whole thing.
When know, Detective, we now know that Mr. Handte, when he said that he used a false name, thus, that was not in fact a false name, was it?
Objection asked and answered. She's testified before, and as she just did, as to the answer to this question.
And let me just follow one last, we may be out of here, but I'll wait for the court's ruling.
I agree, at this point, it has been asked and answered, so the objection is sustained.
Detective Jenkins, when you were filing the affidavits in support of these various criminal complaints, were you putting in there the same erroneous information that you started out with on the first part of August 2019?
Can you be more specific about what information I included in the affidavits that you're asking me about?
Well, the affidavits that you included in there that Mr. Handte had falsified names by putting, not putting his own name down?
I object under 5135, which requires that the party confronting a witness with a prior statement, a supposed prior statement of a witness, must, upon request, show the same statement to opposing counsel. 50.135 sub 1. Well, I have a lot of things, sir. That doesn't mean that that rule does not apply to you. 5135 sub 1.
Mr. Pitaro, do you have that document?
Not in front of me. I assume the detective knows the wrong document.
But the requirement of showing it to Mr. Stege is what we're discussing right now.
Well, I don't think that is that is the actual requirement. A person on an inconsistent statement has to give an opportunity, some courts are in the period of the hearing to either admit or deny. That's the rule. That's what it is. So, I'm not gonna go through it. He doesn't know what's in the wrong documents, then I'll ask the next.
Your Honor, I believe that the actual rule says, if I may.
And hold on, Mr. Evenson. I don't think Mr. Pitaro was finished with what he was saying, please.
Sorry.
No, I'll defer to the Stevenson.
I've looked up the statute, NRS 50.135. In examining a witness concerning a prior statement made by a witness, whether written or not, the statement need not be shown or its content disclosed to the witness, but on request, the statement shall be shown or disclosed to opposing counsel. That's what the actual rule says.
And I hear that Mr. Stege is making the request.
Yeah, that is the rule. I agree, and that's the rule that we should follow.
Wait a second.
It comes to this exact issue.
Well, what do we do? You disclose the name and say you don't know what's there? Is that the rule? I don't think it is.
Well, the rule is.
The court ruling is fine. Is fine. I mean, it's pretty obvious. I'll ask the question. Detective Jenkins, you know what you put in those affidavits?
In general terms, yes.
Did you put in those affidavits that Mr. Handte had falsified the sign-in sheets?
Objection, same objection. If she's being asked for a particular statement that she previously has made, she must be confronted with it, not in generalities. That's the whole purpose of the rule, is to keep everyone honest, so that everyone can know what statement is being asked about, and if necessary, invoke the rule of completeness and other rules.
Well, the rule of completeness has nothing to do with it, Mr. Stege. The rule of completeness, if you read the rule, has nothing to do with it, so we don't throw rules out. The point of the matter is, the way you get a witness to say it is that you ask them, did they do it? And if they say yes, they did, and then we can ask them, out, if they know they didn't.
But what particular statement, sir? You're asking for a particular statement. Allow the witness to know what the statement is that she could admit or deny, not a generality and an argumentative question is the state's position.
But also respect that, I mean, this is becoming nonsensical. When you ask the witness,
I agree.
in your statement, the answer is yes, then you say, did you put this in the statement? And so she doesn't know if it's in her statement. You can say that one way or the other.
And I believe what Mr. Stege's asking, which is the rule that Mr. Evenson just recited, is that when a party is asking to be referenced and shown the document, whether Mr. Stege may or may not have that in his possession, is immaterial. He certainly may, but he, as he stated, now we all know there have been numerous documents filed in this case, and numerous documents the parties may have in their possession. So if he is asking to be shown a particular document that you're referring to, I believe he has a right to be shown that document. That's all I'm saying at this point.
Yes, I would ask the court, I would ask the court that the affidavit from the court, sometimes they follow this case.
It's not helpful, right? This is a chapter and verse type rule, right? It's like saying, look in your file. This is no more different than saying that.
It's very late, and I really don't want to speak evidence, and I'm sorry if I sound insulting, but this is literally a situation where rules are thrown out that have no meaning, that questions are objected to, that a clear question on cross-examination of which I have the right to do it. If the court doesn't want me to do it, you can say so. But it's not going to be a situation that I am somehow deceiving the state and a witness because they don't know what is in their own statement. And when I ask them, did you do it? Are you aware of it? They say yes. And I ask them the specific question and say, well, they don't know. They have to show it to them. That's not the rule. I don't think it's the rule. I don't think it's ever going to be the rule. But your ruling, you're the judge, you make the ruling. I'll let it go with that.
And Mr. Pitaro, I'm not imputing any type of deceitfulness or anything like that whatsoever. Mr. Evenson just read the rule out. We all heard it. It's on the record. And that's why I was simply asking if you have the document that can be shown, or if Ms. Stone has the document that can be shown to Mr. Stege. That was all I said. If you're now saying you're deciding not to pursue that, not to go down that road, okay, so be it. But my question was, do you have the document to show Mr. Stege what you referenced?
Yes, the document from the court file, the affidavit from the court.
Are you asking for Ms. Stone to have a chance to find that and present that to Mr. Stege?
No, I'm asking the court to give the official record to the witness, so she can review her own documents and file under order. And then she can say whether she did or didn't.
Mr. Stege, your response to that request?
Not the role of the court, right? This is a rule of impeachment. The witness must be confronted with a particular statement. The other party must be oriented to the statement. It is clear Mr. Pitaro does not know whether such a statement was made with any particularity in any prior document. And as a result, he lacks the foundation for the question.
Judge, if I may.
Go ahead.
I believe that most affidavits in support of warrants are sealed. I don't believe in the discovery that I have seen an affidavit in the support of the warrants. So it puts defense counsel in a difficult position in this type of cross-examination to examine a witness who put together an arrest warrant application if we don't have it. I'm not saying with 100% certainty in my thousands of pages that I don't have it. I don't recall seeing it. If it's been supplied to us by the district attorney's office, I don't believe I have it. And of course, my client had a counsel or two before me. But I talked to Ms. Stone. It's her understanding that they don't have the affidavits in support of the warrants either. So I believe, I just think it's a disingenuous objection when an application for a warrant has not been provided by counsel to be in the middle of an examination like this for Mr. Pitaro to ask that question and then the state to object when they know that we may not have that document.
And it's been my experience that the sealing of a warrant affidavit is the exception rather than the rule, but Mr. Stege, I'll allow you to address that.
The disingenuous part of this, and I hate, because it's so late in the day to go there, but it's disingenuous to argue, didn't you make this statement in an affidavit when Mr. Evenson is saying he doesn't have the affidavit? An affidavit, by the way, which does not apply to Mr. Pitaro's client. The testimony is Mr. Handte was arrested outright without a warrant. It was only Mr. Hillygus. And so this idea we're arguing this, under this assumption that a statement was made in an affidavit is itself disingenuous. That is a thing on file with the court, right?
Last time I checked the Nevada rules, the figure of government complaint that it is supported by a affidavit. It's gonna be someplace, but that's fine too. If she doesn't know what's in her affidavits, that's fine, we'll deal with it, someplace else.
All right.
I would, if I may, Your Honor, I would just note for the record, at no point in his response to me did Mr. Stege say that myself or Mr. Pitaro have been supplied with the affidavit in support of the arrest warrant.
The record is what it is. Go ahead, Mr. Pitaro.
I have nothing further.
Mr. Stege, redirect.
Do you know who wrote Alice on the sign-in sheet?
I do not know firsthand. The name Alice is written next to the name Tracy.
And do you, did Mr. Handte make any statements about whether he had written the name Alice?
He told me he believed he did.
There was a series of questions on this visitor sign-in sheet about whether you saw the name Sue or Susie anywhere else in the document.
Correct.
You still have that document before you?
I do not have a problem.
That being Exhibit F. I believe you are going to give an answer to that when the next question came. Do you see the name Sue or anywhere else in the document?
I do.
Can you orient us as to where?
So on page 1 of 2 of Exhibit F, 9 lines down, dated 8/7, is the name Robin under visitor's name, and then the name Sue next to it. And then on, let's see, line, well, let's do it this way. 6 lines up from the bottom of that same page, dated 8/8 of 19, next to the names Robin and Kevin is again the name Sue.
Do you know any affiliation between the person named Robin and a person named Sue Hillygus?
I do.
What's that?
Robin Renwick is the daughter of Susan Hillygus.
And so the only place written here, Susie, is in the visitor name on the second to last line, correct?
That's correct.
And the resident is, it is written, or it is, what is written, well, and that's where a different name or names are written, correct?
Correct.
With a time in written as 2 o'clock.
Correct.
You know who wrote that 2 o'clock? Or asked another way, did either of the defendants indicate having written a time in their statements?
Not that I recall.
The line below has, in the visitor name portion, Tracy, correct?
Yes, it does.
And Alice in the resident column, correct?
Correct.
Time in is 2:15, right?
Yes, it is.
And this entry also has a timeout of 2:18.
Yes, it does.
Does the entry above the visitor named Susie line have a timeout?
No, it does not.
And the second sheet of this, does yours also have date stamp numbers on it, the exhibit?
Yes, it does.
Okay, so first page being what, 036?
036, yes.
037, do you have an understanding of this, the first page, which is called visitor sign in, and the second page, resident sign out
Yes.
sheet? Do you have an understanding of the difference in those?
Yes, one is for incoming visitors hoping to visit a patient of the home, and another is for residents who are being checked out of the home and taken away for a period of time.
Does Sue, Roger, Tracy, Alice, Roger, Gus, or any of those names appear on the sign out portion sheet?
It doesn't appear so to me anywhere on the second sheet that's being stamped 037.
On the question of, can you give us the fullness of the explanation that Mr. Hillygus gave for why he believed himself to be duped or felt duped?
He told me that.
Your Honor, wait, well, I do not recall my client ever using the terminology duped. I believe the only time I heard that today was in connection with another party. So I want to make sure that we're clear about where we're going.
You are correct, Mr. Evenson. The same question, Detective, as to Mr. Handte. Thank you.
Throughout the interviews we did with Mr. Handte, he told us about several different circumstances in which he felt raised what he called a red flag or looked suspicious to him. He told me that he regardless of his feelings that those things were not kosher or not on the up and up, he felt duped or easily duped because of his sympathy for Mr. Hillygus, and wanted to believe in the legitimacy of the documents, although he expressed several times that he saw red flags in those documents as well.
And over the course of the two interviews, did by the end, Mr. Handte maintain that he believed the documents to be legitimate?
No, he did not.
And that terminology, legitimate, was used today in court during the testimony. Do you recall if Mr. Handte specifically used that terminology, belief in legitimacy or legitimate?
I think he did.
As to the issue of the Miranda issue as it relates to Mr. Hillygus, you indicated that it may, well, that portion of the interview is contained in the audio. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
As it is in the video related to Mr. Handte, correct?
Correct.
Thank you. No additional questions, Your Honor.
Any redirect from Mr. Pitaro, Mr. Evenson recross based on Mr. Stege's redirect?
Just briefly, a couple of brief questions.
All
right. Did you, on your 8-hour drive back, did you ever go over any of the documents, and by any of the documents, I mean any of the documents that have been introduced into evidence presented to you or discussed today as with my client?
Did we discuss them? Yes. Did I show them to him and go through them with him? Not that I recall.
Okay, and okay, that's exactly what I meant. Did you show them and go over them with him? Okay, and if you didn't go over the specific documents with my client on the drive back, how do you know that y'all are talking about the same documents?
He told me several times that he had filed those documents electronically through the court system.
So
and he referred to them in specific terms.
Well, I understand he referred to them in specific terms, but you're being very clear that he's only talking about things he filed with the court system, right?
I wasn't trying to be clear that he was only discussing things he had filed with the court, but that some of the documents we discussed, were more easily identifiable by his explanation that he had electronically filed them with the court, and also his pretty descriptive, I guess the descriptions he used in describing those documents.
Okay, and my client never once doubted the validity of those documents to you, did he?
I don't know that I could say that's true. In fact, I disagree with that statement.
My client doubted the validity of those documents?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. I have nothing further, Your Honor.
Mr. Pitaro, any recross?
Detective Jenkins, you were asked to refer to the, I think it's Exhibit F.
Yes, sir.
And you're a citizen. And the first entry that you told us about was on August 7th, 2019.
That's correct.
And that was the day before this incident happened.
Yes, sir.
And you have no information at all, do you, that Mr. Handte ever was at the Stone Valley nursing home on August 7th, 2019, do you?
No, I don't, not on August 7th.
Okay, now on August 18th, and you said that person, the people who signed in was Robin and apparently the husband, is that correct?
Robin and Kevin on August 8th of 2019.
What
Yes.
about the 7th?
Oh, you're talking about the 7th?
No.
I just see the name Robin and Sue on August 7th.
And you know Robin is the daughter of Mrs. Hillygus.
Correct.
And if you, as a trained police officer, would have come to the legitimate conclusion that it was Robin who showed up on August 7th, 2019.
Yes, that's the assumption I would make based on this.
As a matter of fact, during the interviewing process, Mrs. I'm sorry, I spaced on her last name. But Robin, the daughter, in fact, said that she had gone and visited Mother August 7th, 2019, didn't she?
I don't recall her telling me that or not. It's very possible.
Actually, she told you she saw her mother every day, didn't she?
I don't know that she said she saw her mother every day.
So now let's go to the 8th. On August 8th, 2019, you have an entry, say, signed for Susan, and it says Robin and Kevin again, is that correct?
Correct.
And that's the same signature that is proposed on the August 7th date, isn't it?
I can tell you it looks consistent to me. I'm certainly not a handwriting expert, but.
I understand that. But you don't mean to mislead this court into saying that you believe that the August 8th entry signed by Robin and Kevin was somehow made by Mr. Handte.
Oh, no, I'm not trying to claim that at all.
Or Mr. Hillygus either, correct?
Correct.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Thank you, no, Your Honor.
All right. Thank you. Ms. Jenkins, you may be excused.
Can I leave these here?
Please. Mr. Stege, any other witnesses?
I believe not, but before I rest, I want to inquire, there was the issue brought through a series of emails from the court staff about an exhibit that was previously introduced, inviting the court in the recess between dates to review that document. Is that a thing the court has done?
So I don't believe it was a document. I thought it was
Yes.
the footage of the body cam of one of the officers in speaking with Mr. Hillygus and another individual outside the police station.
Yeah, then I stand corrected, yes.
Yes, I have reviewed that.
Okay, thank you. Your Honor, I'm prepared to rest on behalf of the state, thank you.
All right, I'll turn to the defense.
No evidence from us at this time, Your Honor.
Mr. Pitaro? Pitaro or Ms. Stone?
Oh, Your Honor.
All right, so we will be moving forward to argument. But before we do, let me just ask, we just need to put on the record, Mr. Evenson, did you explain to Mr. Hillygus his right to testify at this preliminary hearing, and is he declining to do so?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. And Mr. Pitaro or Ms. Stone, have you also explained to Mr. Handte his right to testify at the preliminary hearing, and is he declining to do so?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Now let's turn to argument, Mr. Stege.
Would the court allow me to save all of my argument for the end, in sort of the interest of time, instead of making one and then another argument?
Any objection, counsel?
He can waive his opening closing, as I call it, sure.
Anything to say about that, Mr. Pitaro?
And Mr. Stege had, waive or not waive, based upon, have not made.
I believe he's asking potentially to argue on rebuttal, is essentially what he's asking.
Right, I want to argue once and argue everything at once.
Rebuttal is a rebuttal.
Okay.
You waive your own, you don't get, he's not going to come in and rebut it. He has to burn his own cell, he goes forward, he does go forward.
Mr. Stege, what would you like to do?
I would open.
All right, let's begin with either Mr. Evenson or Mr. Pitaro.
Your Honor, I'm always closest and first to jump up, so if you don't mind, I'll jump right in and do this.